Here it is. The big one.
The big one. My personal top song.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say it's just the best song on the album.
It's pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
It carries so much. There's so much going on in it. Yeah. So we thought we'd do this a little differently by doing a bit of a line by line. So we'll get to that a bit later.
Yeah. So long, yeah, Ephraim and David, please don't sue us. Like, so long as we don't draw the ire of the Drive All Night people.
No.
We have tried to correspond with them multiple times, but they could not be reached for comment. They would not respond to our
peoples couldn't even talk to their
Our legal team tried.
Outrageous.
I know we are going to do rather than an examination of each lyric's meaning like they do, we're going to talk about what each lyric kind of means
to us personally. Yeah. So that'll be great. But first we'll go through our experiences on the taxi ride line.
Which wasn't a very long line.
For us, yeah.
Hi, I'm Michael Earp.
And I'm Bailey Turner.
Welcome to Michael's Walk.
The podcast.
Michael's Walk is a road trip, a search for something. Spoilers! It's myself, and it was inside all along.
If only it were that simple.
Driven by Tori Amos's album, Scarlett's Walk, I'm recreating the journey Scarlett took in its 20th anniversary year.
I'll also be there.
With the loving and patient,
always patient,
support of Bailey and Teague Lee, 3 trans queers set out across America.
That's 33 states in 55 days.
To connect with the songs, the land that inspired them, and the fans inspired by the songs. We'll talk music, travel, healing, and hope as we ask the questions, how do I heal from 15 years of coercive control and manipulation?
And what role does the music we listen to play in our own relationship narratives?
We've self-produced this podcast and trip.
You can support us via GoFundMe.
For the full story, head to michaelerp.net.
So, in Scarlett's journey, she gets out of the lift she got with Mrs. Jesus and hears...
In Chicago?
Yeah, in Chicago. And she hears that a gay friend of hers has died. And so she wants to go and visit his house in Baton Rouge before then going to New Orleans. And so she gets in a taxi and has a long taxi ride from the top of the country to the bottom of the country.
Way to the bottom, yeah.
I kind of find this a bit funny. So, incidentally, we have booked most of our accommodation through booking.com, which I don't necessarily recommend, nor not recommend. It is what it is. But I'm inundated with messages and emails from them for every single stop. The reminder, the things to do in the town, like...
Check out these other places.
Yeah, don't forget to rate us, and then if you don't, like, you get the please rate your experience like 5 times within a week of leaving. It's quite a lot. Anyhow, the one that always tickles me is when I get the notification on my phone for need a taxi to your destination, and we're like 8 hours away by car, and we're driving there, but I'm like, I always chuckle a bit to myself when booking.com is trying to book me a long taxi ride.
Yeah. So we started out in Chicago. So we did the drive from, we spent a day in Chicago, and then the drive down to St. Louis is kind of our taxi ride experience.
That's the parts that we covered.
Yeah. Although me and Teague did get to check out Baton Rouge and New Orleans, so we got to sort of see the tail end of things a little bit. But that was mostly... I'm happy to... I will talk about our experience in Baton Rouge, because you were there. Baton Rouge is where we were when we had that big conversation about whether it was the right thing. You know, you still weren't sure if you were feeling well, and...
Oh, right. On the telephone.
Yeah. We had a very
video call.
Intense phone call about, rejoining up in Orlando and what we wanted to do. And me and Teague had got some really delicious food. I can't remember what it was now. I'm gonna have to find out. We went to some weird diner where they did this specialty, and it was so damn delicious. But for the life of me, I can't remember what it was. But my God, I
can't help you out. Although it might have been the same night that I was eating delicious chicken wontons paid for by my cousin. who sent me not only the money for it, but also the address for me to Uber Eats from with a hand-picked menu item.
Very impressive.
That's how you care for someone in isolation.
That's right.
So we had dinner in Chicago with the lovely Lisa Torum, who is the author of the On Track book, Tori Amos, Album by Album, which is a chronicle of Tori's albums and all of the media that surrounded them as they were released.
Yeah, it's very much like the studio work that she did,
yes.
and how she worked in the studio and the production of them.
So
it's an interesting book to have a bit of a peruse.
I didn't actually realize that the entire time we'd arranged this meetup, and then she said that she had written the book, and I was like, oh, I own that book. I'd already bought it, but I haven't got around to reading it yet because I only got it a month or so before leaving. But
she was so thrilled as well that someone in Australia had her book. It was so lovely, and she was just such wonderful company.
And I got Teague to go find it on the shelf and send a photo of it so I could be like, look, see, I've got your book. It was great.
Yeah. Chicago was so much fun. The first thing we had to do was tick off a look at the Cloudgate sculpture.
Yeah, commonly known as the Bean.
Yeah,
in Millennium Park. And it was astounding. It was so much more beautiful and fascinating than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
I was expecting it to just be a shiny orb in the middle of a park, the end. But no, I was really entranced by it. And knowing that its actual name, the name of the sculpture, is Cloudgate, and how that plays out when you're there looking at it and looking at the sky and the reflections. Oh, it's just wonderful.
It was. So we got to do that. We just like
we did the river walk.
We did do the river walk, which was wonderful because the river walk and sort of around that area is where two of my favourite rom-coms were filmed. My Best Friend's Wedding and Never Been Kissed. And so being there really brought up this really beautiful feeling of nostalgia for me, and kind of, I don't know, something about it really changed my heart. I just kind of found myself feeling optimistic again for the first time in a long time, and feeling hopeful and reconnecting. For a really long time, that the 90s rom-com girl spirit is absolutely in me, and all those 90s noughties films mean such a great deal to who I am as a person and how I approach life. So it was great to be in sort of this center of them. Really shifted things for me.
Yeah.
And we got to head to the Garfield Conservatory, which was beautiful.
Yes, that was gorgeous too.
And the Women's and Children's Bookstore.
Women and Children's First Bookshop. My goodness. I have visited a lot of bookshops in my time, but never have I felt so, I don't know, overwhelmingly uplifted by a single purpose in a bookshop. It was just, we are here to better the community, and such a inclusive feminist approach to book selling. I was in love.
Yeah, and it wasn't remarkable in any sort of architectural sense like a lot of the other bookstores we've been to, but just there was such a sense of power and of purpose in what they had, and it was very unafraid, and unabashed about there were big signs on the counters like, do not use gendered pronouns to speak to any of our staff. That was, they just were like, no, this is how we're going to run things around here. And we reserve the right to refuse service based on things like that. It was amazing.
The enormous sign behind the counter that is typically in a bookshop left to promote a title or have new releases was simply a giant sign that said, abortion is healthcare. Abortion is healthcare.
Was a wicked place. Yeah, we definitely wanted to spend a lot more money than we could there.
Yes. I did, though, again, ask for another recommendation and bought another poetry collection. And that was actually the collection that I mentioned the poem of in the other episode.
Yeah, absolutely. We also took a bit of a stroll, and I had a pretty incredible experience that I wasn't sure if I'd share on the podcast, but
Here we are,
and I feel like it is poignant to the episode, for reasons I'll explain in a bit. But we got down to this queer fashion store, very much like a gay sex shop, clothing, apparel. And they had the funniest...
called the men's room.
That's right. And they had the funniest shirts and this great stuff. And there was this wall of pup hoods. And the pup community is one that I've only just started to connect with. I've made some beautiful friends in the pup community.
I think we should explain to
of
some
course.
people what you're talking about. Not everyone will be au fait with pup hoods.
Totally fair. Sorry, everybody. But so in somewhere sort of in the queer kink, diaspora, there are a group of people who feel a great sense of liberation and joy from behaving as a dog would and kind of adopting the open-spiritedness that we know that real dogs bring to our life. And then I think on top of that, what that allows them to do is create a kind of sexual liberation as well. So there's a particular aesthetic that goes with it, where there's a mask that they call a hood, and it's sort of like an all-over face mask. It's usually made out of leather or something like that, and it kind of creates this sort of human dog hybrid look, sort of kink fetish situation, and it's a real fetishistic thing, a very intense form of role play. For some people, it goes deep enough where, while they're in that form of play, they're sleeping in kennels and being walked around on leashes and all sorts. And some people just enjoy wearing the hood for that sense of anonymity and that freedom and that call of the wild. So I've met a few pups in the last little while, and they have been some of those wonderful relationships I've forged. And I'm really trying to find my way. There aren't a lot of girls in the pup community. I haven't seen a single trans girl, and I have looked. So if you know of any trans women who are pups, I'd love to connect with them and ask about their experiences. But in the men's room, I saw a hood that I really was attracted to, and I thought I would try on my first one. And it was amazing. I'm not sure if it's really somewhere that I'm going to go in the long term, but there was something really beautiful and powerful that I really, really enjoyed, and got to send this photo to my closest, pup baby, Soda, and just to feel that positivity was, it's going to be a real special memory across this whole trip, was
Excellent.
doing that, and exploring another mode of my queerness. Like, I'm 32 years old, and that's the beautiful thing about being queer, is that there's always something you can explore as your personal evolution continues. Suddenly something that you didn't understand before becomes available to you. And the more open you become to something because of the other experiences you have, suddenly these doors just open. It's just one of my favourite things about life and about being queer.
Well, I had a great find in that shop too.
You did?
For years I've wanted a harness of sorts.
So this isn't the harness that Michael's talking about isn't related at all to a pup harness or about.
It's
this
more
is different.
just the straps around a chest. If you think like Spartan style harness, I guess that's where it stems from.
Yeah.
But I've always wanted an elastic one, or what do they call it? I was told that it's not called elastic here in America. It's
is it a stretch harness? Or
no, it's the actual material that it's made up of.
Spandex.
Yeah, I don't know. I just call it an elastic harness.
Yeah, let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
I don't know why elastic's such a problem. I also don't know why we really haven't fact checked before we did our episode today.
No. Why would we do such a thing? Research? What's research? Anyhow, I've always wanted one. It's the type of thing that you wear to like a queer dance party or something. It just sort of, it's just a little thing to wear when you're shirtless, but then be like not shirtless.
It accentuates your body, and look, it gives some other people something to hold on to. Like it's a
there's
place
a number
for storage.
of reasons.
Like a bunch of fun you can have with a harness.
And most of the time, the harnesses that you see are black and leather or elastic. But
they certainly found their start in the leather community,
and they've been adapted to a more sort of
go-go aesthetic.
Yeah, go-go aesthetic. That's right. And so I found one that was rainbow.
Yay!
So
more along the go-go line, you'd say.
Yeah. More along the Michael line.
Yes.
Like, here was one that had that was all rainbows. I was like, I'm gonna try this on. And I have tried on many, many harnesses, but none of them have fit well, none of them have felt comfortable, none of them have made me feel good. So I've never got around to buying one. But here we were in this shop. I saw one, thought I'd try it on. It fit perfectly. I felt incredible in it. And
you looked incredible in it too.
Yeah, apparently. I looked great.
Goes great with some of the other things you've been purchasing.
Oh, yes. I did also buy a rainbow jockstrap in New York City. But, anywho,
Moving on.
I was like, oh, do I buy it? Do I not? And then I checked the because they're always so expensive too. That's the thing.
Any kind of fetish wear is very pricey.
And then I checked the price, and it was like so ridiculously affordable that I'm like, okay, I guess I have no more excuses. This has checked all the boxes.
Yeah, it's perfect.
And so, yay, that's a bit of fun.
So,
that will probably only get used maybe once or twice a year, but so be it. Like, I'm so glad I have it.
Oh, like homoerotica as soon as we get back, babe. Let's do
Midsummer.
Yeah.
Carnival.
Gay times.
Yeah.
We're gonna smash that out.
We'll do it all.
But so Chicago was we actually had a really wonderful chance meeting before we met with Lisa out the front.
Outside the restaurant. We were walking towards the restaurant, and I was wearing
your I Believe in Peace?
Yeah. Yeah, I was wearing the official merch that has a peace sign on the front, and on the back it says, I believe in peace, bitch, Tori Amos. And a person outside the restaurant was like, oh my God, Tori Amos. Did you see her when she was here? And I said, no, but we did see 5 shows on the West Coast. And then we got chatting. Her name was Georgia. And she was just so excited about what we were doing.
Yeah.
And it was just lovely to have that little chance meeting. There were the next generation above couple that I assume were her parents, but I'm not, like, they might not have been, but they were grumbling about how us liking Tori Amos was generational appropriation.
That's right. She's ours.
She's ours.
She belonged to us.
But no, we're firmly claiming her.
That's it. Tori Amos is an artist for all seasons.
Yes.
She's an all ages artist.
All ages.
Like, literally, there are people who bring 4 and 5-year-olds to Tori Amos concerts. There was like an 8-year-old girl at San Diego. Anyone can access and enjoy Tori Amos.
Yeah. And so that was just a lovely little meeting, and we...
Yeah, shout out to Georgia.
Told her about the trip and everything.
Yeah.
And then the next day, we got up and we got up real early because we were like, we need to get to St. Louis and make the day of it. We had, as you've heard by now, we've had a number of setbacks and pitfalls and emotional roadblocks.
Yeah, which I think was only worsened... Sorry, I cut you off.
No.
Which was only worsened by the fact that by the time we reached kind of Chicago, we'd had the stretch of the travel had meant, between Toronto, Cleveland, Columbus, we'd had sort of 3-4 days where we just haven't even gotten to, take a breath in a city and realize what we're even doing there or what that city is about. And that's, that was the point of this tour, was to kind of go, let's get a bit of an idea about these little spots and let's form an understanding about what it is about these places that inspired the song, or how they relate, how they connect. And by the time we got to Chicago, we were like, we feel like our feet haven't touched the ground.
Yeah.
And what that does to our spirits is quite significant. So we were really, Chicago was a really good time, because the way that it panned out, we did decide to leave extra early out of Columbus. Because we wanted to take as many photos as we could for Teague, because Chicago is his favorite city. And it meant that we had this really full, fun day, and we had this great accommodation. So we had this really good sleep, and we were like, right, let's make the most of getting out to St. Louis, and let's have another day like this one.
So we got up super early, and we got down to St. Louis by about midday or something.
Oh, no, it was earlier than that. We were there for 10:30 in the morning.
Oh, yeah, it was 10:30 or something.
We left at 6. Yeah, we smashed it.
But we're so glad we did, because not only were we able to leave our bags at our accommodation and then head into town, We saw the arch, the gateway arch, that is stunning.
Amazing. It's like, I can't remember how many feet high it was, but it's like 630 feet high or something.
I remember like 192 meters. Does that sound right?
Nah, because I'm 180. Oh no, 100 meters. Oh dear. I'm tall, but I'm not quite that tall.
No.
Yeah, it is something like that, and but it marks the crossing of the Mississippi and the Missouri rivers, I want to say.
Well, it was built to memorialize the fact that St. Louis was seen as the gateway to the east.
Because of the Louisiana Purchase.
Because that's where all the cattle drives had to come through. That's where the trains came through. So it had a big boom when it was founded because it opened up the east and the west being able to connect. And so, you know, part of me is a little, I don't know, uncomfortable with what we're celebrating with it.
There were some elements of that.
Because in the museum, it was very much
displaced these people, and
Yeah.
these people lost everything, and there were massacres of all this. Yeah, and
I appreciated that the museum acknowledged
yes,
that. In fact, the first display as you walk in said, oh, I forget what it said
it was
now.
These are the original people.
Yeah, these are the original people of this land, and it mentioned their name. I took a photo of it, so I'll have to share it later. But I was impressed with how much they acknowledged what they had done, but at the same time, they were still heartily celebrating the fruits of their labor.
Yeah.
Anywho,
It's a tricky balance, that one, that, you know, we're not going to unpack that one in one episode.
but the monument is gorgeous.
Yes, it
and
was.
we went up inside in its little rickety carriage with a Republican
Oh my
couple
God,
from
with this
Texas.
Republican conservative couple who were shitty about mask mandates on the cruise they were about to go on.
Yeah, she was really put out that she had to wear masks on her cruise to Alaska because it's just the cold, isn't it?
Yeah, and then the husband said, well, no one's dying anymore. We do to our face, no one's. We're from Australia. This is like one of the highest death rates of COVID in the world.
And
yes, they are still dying.
Yes.
Oh
my goodness.
These people were the pits. It was just so funny, and they really thought that we would empathize with them. They really believed that. They were really quite dumbfounded when we were like, no, it's serious, and the people who you're happy to die because you don't want to wear a mask. Yeah, it's all very bewildering.
And then... we went to what I believe is the greatest museum I've ever visited.
I can't believe they have the nerve to call it a museum.
It's true. It's like...
But it is...
It's like cake with an icing of museum.
Yeah.
Or not even.
I suppose, it just changes your understanding about what a museum actually is.
It's like calling carrot cake a vegetable.
This place, City Museum, is could only call it an interactive art gallery. It was all incredible pieces of art.
Historical
yes,
artifices and all sorts
true.
Of things found in the city of St. Louis. And so there is the history there too. That's why it is a museum. But yes, it's more
a playground.
Playground in an enormous building that's like adult size. You go spelunking in caves. You go sliding down 10-story slides.
That used to be because it was a shoe factory, so they were all shoe slides.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bananas and little crawl spaces and climbing through
literally any hole in the wall you can walk into and you don't know where you'll end up.
Yeah.
It may lead you up this weird spiral staircase to another floor, or you might find yourself on a slide to go down to a floor below.
Or, as it happens, in a complete blackout maze that got smaller and smaller the further you went into it, until you are literally dragging your entire body weight along the floor while 9-year-olds zip and zoom around you because they're all tiny and energized, and you're clawing.
And I was hysterically laughing at Bailey, who was not having the greatest time.
I was having the greatest time.
You were laughing too.
Oh my God, it was so funny. It was just, it was the most comical thing. that could have happened this entire trip, because it was that thing where I was so determined to enjoy it or something. I was like, no, I can do this. I can bend in half, and I can do this on all fours. No, I can get through this tiny crevice.
And we did.
We did.
And we did.
And it was just hilarious.
We were sore the next day, but we did.
Oh yeah, bruises everywhere from climbing on these like metal grates that were suspended like.
And then there was a rope, and I jumped on it and was swinging back and forth, like
so
came
happy.
in like a wrecking ball.
It was amazing.
It was so good.
There's actually the other experience that I had there that I loved was they had doctor fish in a pond, and so like people will know what doctor fish are because they have them in sort of tanks, and you put your feet in, and they basically nibble off all the dry skin. But this one you did on your hands, and there was this. It was, I know this might sound a bit intense, but it was like spiritual. It was really. The kind of peace that kind of came from just dunking your hands in water and having these fish kind of swarm all over your hands and clean them basically and just, I don't know, there was something symbiotic about it. There was something quite intense. It was almost, there was a part of it where like a whole bunch of people took their hands out at once, and so they all kind of like flooded over to me, and so I had like, my hands were covered in these fish. I had some poor little like 5-year-old like dipped their hands in next to me, and the fish like weren't having a bar. And I was like, this is the thing, like your hands are too young and fresh, like my hands have all the old like nasty skin on them.
And I really wanted to get involved, but I can't because of my skin on my hands, and they wouldn't have allowed me to put my feet in.
No, it wasn't quite like that. But we
so
might do
I
that
just
some
had
other
to
time.
film.
It was.
Well, I did get to do that in the creek.
Oh yes, but not quite the same.
Not quite the same.
The doctor fish, that was just.
No, they were doctor fish.
Oh, were they?
They were nibbling at my my ankles.
Amazing.
Anyway, not quite the same number or intensity. But
we just had
basically,
this incredible time there.
City Museum, put St. Louis on your itinerary simply for City Museum.
Yeah.
And if you've got kids, take them along, make a day of it. It was just an absolute blast. And it really was the Lily is dancing on the table moment for us on this trip, because we'd been pushed so far on so many levels. And then that week leading up to being in St. Louis it really did a number on us. And so being able to just be giant kids and laugh our heads off at how ridiculous we were being. And go down a 10-story slide where my shirt kept on coming up and my back was like scraping on the metal, and I was like, this is the most painful slide I've ever been on, but I am loving this.
It would have been the best time ever. I thinking about it now, I'm like, I think it may have saved the trip. Like, we were really falling apart. Like, the wheels were really coming off, and just the ability that we had to just stop taking everything so seriously and just laugh our heads off.
It was such great fun.
Yeah.
Such fun.
Yeah, it made a big difference. And then like the night continued into even more awesome.
Yeah, it was great. We went out and saw the queer scene in St. Louis. We went to the Grove.
We did, after a lovely dinner with Mark and Alicia.
Oh, yes.
Who took us out to this beautiful Italian place, and we got to have toasted ravioli.
Gems they were.
They were absolute stars. We hopefully we get to stay in contact with them. They were this amazing couple with really amazing stories, and just and
such
it was
passion for music too.
Yes.
Like they travel all over the place just to see various people in concert. Tori being one of them, but Morrissey, ironically, is their other top.
Was Mark's favourite.
So.
And Alicia loved Elton John. We had a great time with them, and they, directed us to go get some delicious dessert that we could not finish because it was so.
Well, I finished mine.
Oh, you did? Yeah, I was.
We got frozen custard at the iconic
Ted
Drew's.
Before we headed to the Grove, wherein we met the incredible Bea and Christian, who took us on a whirlwind tour of all the best gay venues and filled our night with this incredible buzz of energy. It felt amazing just meet some people who were so passionate about life and passionate about what we did, and earnest and sincere and amazing. They really
Like, we were only out for, like, maybe 2 hours.
We were, and we just...
But we went to 3 different bars, saw drag drag trivia at 1, then we had a dance at the 2nd,
Yeah.
and then at the 3rd, we were chilling in the back, talking, and...
Just having a ball.
It was
great.
just, their energy was incredible. We thought they'd be like, they were lifelong friends. Turns out they'd only met 2 weeks earlier.
Yeah. They were real glamorous bitches.
And we were in need.
We were in need.
We were so thrilled. And I almost didn't want to go out because I was feeling a bit exhausted after the day, but I'm so glad we did.
Yeah, we made a really great time. We just had, our taxi ride journey was just really fun. And I don't know if I can say that about anywhere else. Like, we've had so much intensity and so much kind of going on.
And deep conversations with people and deep emotions with ourselves.
Yeah.
But here in taxi ride territory, Chicago and St. Louis, it was just a blast.
Just a
that
hoot.
really put us back on track.
Absolutely it did. Speaking of getting back on track, we had better tackle these lyrics.
Yeah, we're half an hour into this episode and we haven't even started talking about the song yet.
Ah!
Whoops! Stars!
Here we go. Let's do it.
Lily is dancing on the table. We've all been pushed too far. I guess on days like this, you know who your friends are.
Let's do it. I think for me, this really conjures up queerness. Whenever I hear this part of the song, I think about what it means to come together in queer venues and shake off the pain and the shame of the outside. This line has always conjured up images of, and once upon a time they were aspirational.
Camaraderie and...
Yeah, very much that. But now I'm very thrilled that one of the big parts of transition that really changed for the better for me was I got to kind of finally connect to the nightlife and the partying and having fun and meeting people who just want to take a break from how far they've been pushed. So that's what it kind of does for me. It speaks to me about the queer setting of the song for me.
Yeah, it's not so much the queerness for me. I very much relate to the need to cut loose when you have been pushed too far. I would always look for ways to have my fun with friends and really step out of my own world when I was trapped in that relationship and things looked so dire and I had been pushed too far. And so all I wanted was to dance on the table. And ironically, I basically never went dancing when we were together because dancing sure as hell wasn't his thing. And so it's funny, when I left high school, most of my high school friends were convinced that I was going to be club king, like out at the clubs every single night. I got to the age of 33 and I'd been to a club 3 times in my life. And it's not because I didn't want to, it's just, it just never happened.
This wasn't the lifestyle. Well, you've made up for lost time, haven't you?
Oh, absolutely.
As have I, in all fairness.
So that's kind of what that meant for me. Just another dead fag to you, that's all. Just another light missing on a long taxi ride.
So this song, this lyric, if you're queer and a Tori Amos fan, I've just felt so seen. And it was such a powerful statement to make about how much our lives matter to the wider community, i.e. not at all. And I just felt like Tori was, charging her listeners and charging the people in her life with her disgust at how dispensable and disposable they think queer lives are because of their judgments and their prejudices. This song for me really became, I always loved the song, but it really took its place in my life, and I really met her when the shooting happened at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, which is one of the most serious shooting massacres in a gay venue at that time, and it really rocked the world. And I was part of a sort of queer lobby group at the time, and I listened to that song a lot through that period to get over it, because we were all grieving, but in the way, queer people very traditionally grieve in celebration. We grieve by partying. We go and we we go to the circuit and we go to the clubs and we celebrate life because we know how short it is and how painful it may have been. So yeah, that's kind of what it connected with. That's what kind of connected the dots for me.
For me, it was more about how easy it is to push aside yourself in a way, or to me it links closely with the line in Pancake, seems in vogue to be a closet misogynist homophobe. Because my experience with my ex was that he was so derisive, is that the word?
Yes.
Of queerness and like especially campness and feminine queers, that I really got this overwhelming sense of internalized homophobia and misogyny that he would then sort of manifest by degrading other queer people. And so, and like on some level, part of me was like, well, that's kind of where I am. Like, I can't hide the fact that I'm gay. I'm very flamboyant. I lisp all the time. I don't know.
You are gay.
I'm gay. But like, it's very easy to just try and assimilate and try and live the heteronormative lifestyle, even though you're in a same-sex relationship or whatever.
Yeah.
That it's just another dead fag. You can easily write that off as being not important and less than.
Yeah.
And I'm down to your last cigarette and this "we are one" crap as you're invading this thing you call love. She smiles way too much.
This line really resonated with me on this tour because we came during Pride Month, and I've never seen so many pride flags.
Oh, everywhere.
And yet, none of them instilled me with a sense of safety or joy or comfort or pride. Because the corporate pride machine seems to be becoming more and more overwhelming every year. And every year, the queer community seems to forget
what they do the rest of the year.
Yeah, or the queer community seem to forget how artificial a lot of this sort of signposting is by these businesses, where they thwack on a pride flag for Pride Month and think that excuses them from the politicians they invest in, the causes that they do and don't support, the activism that they don't really engage with either inside or outside their business model. And it's like it's that whole pride as a protest thing. Like, how can we be living in a time where the Sydney Mardi Gras began as a desperate plea for protection from police violence, and now community groups don't march in Mardi Gras until after ANZ and the police and the Liberal Party. Like, I don't know if things have changed now, but like, I know there are plenty of pride parades that still put corporates ahead of community groups, which I think is fucking disgusting. It's just that thing of, and all these signs, love wins and love is love. I'm like, this is crap. This "we are one" crap, as you are stealing resources from communities, as you are blatantly ignoring the very real struggles of queer people because it's not in your remit or whatever. This thing you call love, it's all veneer, it's all smiling, and there's no actual real work or commitment or dedication. It's all just a pretty face that you've put on your business for 30 days. Fuck that.
Yeah. That...
I can see that we're having like a sort of similar kind of Scarlet's Walk moment where like, I'm taking this on very politically.
But no, I see all of that.
But I'm enjoying that that's the difference that we can kind of speak to in each one.
But I guess the point of my project in this is that I'm exploring my relationship and how it fit into this album.
Which makes so much sense because the project I'm working on, my poetry collection, is about a response to American politics and American life. And so it makes total sense as to what we're getting from each place creatively and what we're investigating in each song from a creative perspective are these two different streams, and it's amazing to share them together. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this "we are one" crap as you're invading, do I have to explain it? I feel like it's so obvious now, to me anyway, that, claiming you're a couple and claiming we're in this together, and we were so unhappy, both of us. We had so many problems, both of us. Yet, we smiled to everyone. We smiled for the camera. We smiled for our own memories and erased the ones we didn't like. But more and more, he just invaded my life more and more and took more and more until all I had was the facade, the smile. But I'm glad you're on my side.
Yep.
I'm glad you're on my side.
And those, I want to kind of tie those stanzas back in together of like, you're down to your last cigarette, and this we are one crap as you're invading this thing you call love. She smiles way too much, but I'm glad you're on my side still.
Yeah.
And I missed a bit earlier when, like, that down to your last cigarette part, I had a kind of moment when I was in New York when I was quitting vaping. I don't know if I've mentioned this before. But I decided to quit vaping when we left New York. I needed to shake some of that habit, and I took literally my last breath as I got back into the apartment before we left New York and headed up to Connecticut, which was really a really wonderful moment because it brought me into a space of really supreme clarity. And that's kind of what this lyric is about for me, and what it personally attaches is when you're down to your last cigarette, there's this real clarity in the moment where you go, okay, this is it. This is the last one I've got. It kind of just takes out all the crap, and you really can just sort of see things for what they are. And you really see that we are in a shit situation. And it is a problem that corporations are kind of taking over the pride movement. However, it's better that than what it used to be.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I'm glad you're on my side for a month of the year. And I'm glad that I've now got at least a bit of a foot in the door to ask you to actually do something beyond the kind of virtue signaling,
Yeah, precisely. And I made this point in my track-by-track videos on Instagram in the lead up to this trip, but that still at the end, I love the way that she pauses with that still. I'm glad you're on my side still. And you honestly don't know whether she's saying, I'm glad you're still, you continue to be on my side, or whether she's like, I'm glad you're on my side still, ... question mark.
But,
but what does you being on my side entail? Who are you?
Questioning,
You think you deserve a trust fund just because you want one. Sure, you talk the talk when you need to. I fear the whole world is starting to believe you.
This is where it does get a bit personal for me, where I have a lot of memories about relationships where I really believed I could trust someone and support someone in where they wanted to go in life. And I am at a point now where I say that my friendship has kind of two rules. I'm a very open and loyal friend, but there's sort of two conditions under which I cannot be friends with somebody. The first one is if there's jealousy. I cannot have a friend in my life who is jealous or doesn't want me to have the things that I do, and doesn't celebrate where my life is going. But the other one is someone who lies to themselves so much that they start to believe it, and they can't even tell what's a lie and what's not. And what the danger becomes there is that there is nothing kind of real anymore. It's all kind of fabricated and things that are based off lies, and you lose track of what the lies even are and where you're even going. And so this kind of, you talk the talk when you need to, you kind of talk shit, and you say that something is hurting you in the ways that it's not, or you say that you're trying to do something that you're not actually trying to do, and then suddenly people start to believe you, and suddenly your life becomes a sort of constant manipulation. And I can't be around someone who is willing to do that, and that goes for me as well, where I fall into those traps. And that's why I can't have those people in my life, because it puts me at risk of doing that to myself and not living authentically, and falling further in love with the stories I make up about myself than the realities.
Yeah, For me, it's so close to my experience because my ex purportedly, to be honest, anything I say about him take with a grain of salt because I don't know how much of his history I knew for a fact or was fabricated for the narrative that he had in mind for me and us. But supposedly he came from a wealthy family. He gave the impression he was very used to having money. In fact, when we did meet, he was in a very high-paying job. And we did lead a quite lavish, disposable income lifestyle. And so I got very comfortable very quickly, being an 18-year-old who didn't have to stress about money. I mean, I still worked, I still contributed. The only time that I cut back on how much I was contributing financially was when I was studying full-time, but I was still working 2 days a week, even though I was at uni 5 days a week. It was a bit hectic. But anyway, when things turned awry, I have talked about this in a previous episode, and he was unemployed for an extended period of time. He still couldn't accept that we had to change our standards of living. We still gave this facade of comfortable lower middle class life, and like there was very much a putting on airs around people. Like we might have frozen chips and frozen fish for dinner like several nights a week just so that we could afford to bake a roast dinner for the time that we had friends over on the weekend. There was a lot of that sort of negotiation and juggling of finances going on. But at the same time, he refused to go on the dole because it was beneath him. And like it was, and he would talk about waiting to get inheritance from his parents, but like also, as far as I could tell, he was estranged from his parents. He never spoke to them. I never met them, or any of his family. It just...
Red flag.
Yeah, there was...
I mean, one of infinite, you know.
Yeah, I had the vision, the image at one point recently of, Christoph. Is that his name? Christo? The artist could use the red flags from my relationship to cover a building.
Yeah.
That was the level of red flags going on. But the other thing is in a previous life, he was a lawyer of some kind. I'm not entirely sure what sort of law he practiced, but there were I found out about this particular incident a year or so after we broke up. But some friends of ours were managing a cafe. They were having some legal difficulties with their landlord, and he offered to help them out with legal advice. And so he did, and then they offered to pay him. He made a show of saying no, but then sent an invoice to them. They paid him $5,000 for legal advice. And then when it came time with the landlord's lawyer saying, well, we need to talk to your lawyer to get this sorted, he ghosted them, completely left them in the lurch. And at the last minute, they had to hire another lawyer and go through the whole thing again just to get that sorted. And he just never spoke to them again. And then they stopped talking to me because they didn't know how to deal with that with me. I didn't know any of that had taken place. I never saw that $5,000. And then I met up with them after the breakup, and they were like, the reason we didn't tell you is because we knew it wasn't you, but we just couldn't have anything to do with him. And so we had to separate ourselves.
Yeah.
And so it, like, I did spend a lot of my relationship fearing that the whole world was starting to believe him and believe all this bullshit. And the lies that he would tell people to sort of save face and paint this picture of himself as this upstanding citizen, when really he was an alcoholic mooching off me and, like, secretly committing crimes.
We told you this would be a big one, everybody.
Yeah. Then it goes into the chorus again, and then the last verse is, Lily is dancing on the table. We've all been pushed too far today. Even a glamorous bitch can be in need. This is where you know the honey from the killer bees. And I'm glad you're on my side. Still.
So much to unpack here. But, you know, that Lily's dancing on the table, you know, we've talked about where that kind of comes from for me, you know, and it really kind of seems to get, it really kind of pushes back on that grief side of it. And kind of then bringing it into, even a glamorous bitch can be in need. You never really know what someone's going through.
No.
And the personal experience this brings up for me was there was a time I studied as a publicist. That was my sort of, my bachelor's degree. And I went into the arts, and I knew I was going to go into the arts and be a theatre publicist. That's what I wanted. And through kind of my journey, I found myself kind of in this sort of Adelaide sub-celebrity kind of scenario where I had a lot of recognition value, but, you know, how much substance there was to my work. And the thing about being a publicist, and this is why I burnt out so quick, is it's so much about artifice. And there's kind of a bit of a gay glitterati that can happen where, because you're a bit fashionable and because you're queer, you kind of find yourself in these rooms with these other queer people, and everyone kind of pretending like they're kind of living, you know, as you say, living this lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I remember being invited to an event. It was hosted by Emma Hack, who you may not know the name of, but you will possibly remember the Gautier video, somebody that I used to know. Emma Hack is a very famous body painter, and she painted Gautier and Kimbra for that video. So she became very successful and very famous for her work. And I wound up at one of her sort of parties with a friend of mine who'd modelled for her back in their, you know, days. And, you know, everyone was buying this, you know, ridiculously expensive art, and, you know, there were, it was, you know, $300 a head lunch, and, you know, it was just kind of wild to me. And I was sitting across from my friend Erin, who was there, and we kind of were like, what are we doing here? Like, we're kind of confused. Like, this clearly isn't an event for us. Like, you know, we're not in a position to be buying kind of this art. And we kind of noticed that at every table there was kind of a mixture of people who were quite well-to-do and art collectors and you know, people like that. And then these really young, kind of very queer-ish, you know, or queer-coded at the very least, attractive, you know, entrepreneurs. And it was kind of this, we realized that we were kind of there as these novelties for these rich older people to kind of talk to and feel attended to by, and it was quite a bizarre situation to be in, and I felt kind of very compelled to flirt and to network and to hustle, because it was like, you know, this is a $300 head dinner, and I literally had like $2 in my bank account. Like, I was that broke. I had hired the suit I was wearing on a credit card, which was like a fancy silver suit to make me stand out, because that was what we were told to do. You know, I was eating Arnott's Family Assorted as my weekly groceries. Like, I would get like a packet of biscuits. That was my weekly, and a bottle of Coke. That's what I bought. Everything else went on stationery and coffees for meetings, and, like, you know, I'm right there with you on what you were talking about, this falsehood. And it is where you know what's real and what is this pernicious, conniving, cutthroat world. And that was kind of how my publicity career ended. I had a great talk with someone who said, we will not hire you. You are not going to survive in this business, because we all know that you are too kind, and you don't have the guts for it.
Yeah.
And like, it hurt a great deal, because I really wanted to make a career in that industry, but I'm very grateful now to that mentor who said, mate, we all know you're not going to slit anyone's throat to get what we need from you, and so we're never going to hire you. That's kind of what it kind of brings about for me, is what it meant to be this kind of, what it means to be gay, or what it means to be queer and fashionable.
Yeah.
And, you know, we talked about this so often about, you know, how, you know, queer people who have nothing move into a neighborhood and make the best of it they can and start selling books and doing bits and pieces and populating the staff at the coffee shops, and then suddenly all the rich people start to come in because that neighborhood's suddenly very trendy and it's alive and it's cultured, and then they start to move there because they enjoy it so much, and then the, you know, queers and people of color and disabled people get priced out of the markets, and you know, you know, this kind of paragraph, this stanza really speaks to that for me. And what's funny is I never knew it was Honey from the Killer Bees. I always thought, because of the way that she sort of phrases it, I was like, this is when, you know, the hunter from the Killer Bees. I like the difference between, you know, a human killer, and like, you know, a natural killer, which, you know, and so that kind of always spun for me, like, you know, the idea of people who are manipulative and want to hurt you as you know, from a social perspective, and the difference between what is naturally killing you. So that was insightful.
Yeah, no, that is perfectly illustrated in the lyrics as far as I'm concerned.
The last thing I'll throw in there is that my Tori Amos lyrics tattoo, which is in her handwriting, it's on my inner thighs, it says the black of the blackest ocean and that tear in your hand. The tattoo place that I went to, I picked special because it was called Killer Bees Tattoo.
Oh, amazing.
It's in Carlton, yeah.
Yay.
And they let me play, I was the only person in there that let me play Tori Amos the whole time that I got my tattoo.
That's fantastic. I love when they get on board like that. For me, it's very much that I spent so long building that facade and maintaining that facade and playing along with his game, because heaven forbid anyone find out that our life is a sham. And so, I mean, I don't think anyone could describe him as a glamorous bitch, but like, I certainly put on airs in that direction.
Yeah.
And Lord knows that I was in need. So the amount of people that said to me afterwards, we had no idea that this was going on, or that you felt that, or you were struggling or anything. And it's because I had so confidently constructed what people could see. And part of that was because I had been forbidden to talk about our issues with anyone else. He outright, blatantly stated certain topics and certain issues, and the fact that we didn't have money. Like, he even hated when I would get a bargain from an op shop, and I'd wear it somewhere, and I'd be feeling so good about myself in this outfit, and I'd mention to a friend, hey, look at this, isn't it great? And they'd be like, yeah. And I'd be like, $1. Because I think that's brilliant. But then he'd rouse on me later saying, like, you shouldn't tell people how much you pay for clothing. And I'm like, but it's a bargain. Like, I think that's something to celebrate. Like, I'm not so proud as to, like, deny that I shop at op shops.
It's like, not telling people how much you spend on clothing works the other way, where it's like, oh yes, I spent $500 on this purse. Like, that's gross. But like, saying that you like saved on something that looks wonderful is a great, powerful thing.
I think
also,
so.
Always buy op shop clothing. Don't support fast fashion.
The fashion industry is a bit warped. I studied it for a year and decided, this is not for me. So, yeah, that brings us to the end of the song. She repeats another dead fag.
Which, coming on to that, we do want to talk about the story behind this song and talk about the themes of grief. So the song was initially written as a sort of tale about a man who was dying of AIDS. And, you know, the AIDS crisis extended from, you know, the 80s right through to the mid-90s. And, you know, HIV contraction still happens to this day.
Oh, yes.
And so she was writing about someone who then actually, if she says miraculously, lived through it and did not perish of AIDS complications and managed to live. And so the song got shelved for a time until the, well-known makeup artist and Tori's close friend Kevin Aquan died of complications related to liver and prescription medication and tumor.
He had a tumor, and the painkillers that he was on created an issue with his liver.
And in the wake of his death, because of his fame and notoriety, a lot of people felt compelled to comment on his life, and a lot of people felt compelled to, attach themselves to his legacy when, Tori knew full well that they were not there when he needed them, and they were all fair weather friends, and they were all, it was all false, and that kind of really brought up for us, a lot about the aftermath of death, and the grieving process, and what it really, it can really bring out the best in people sometimes, but can also bring out the absolute worst in people. And for me, this particular theme, while I don't really attach it to Taxi Ride, I think it was an important thing that I wanted to share, because we've obviously done the Your Cloud episode, and I've talked about my brother, and obviously when you talk about someone who has died, it's very much a rose-coloured picture. It's always sort of, it becomes kind of steeped in tragedy, and therefore there's a sense of, all things are forgiven. But I feel like it's an important thing to talk about on this podcast. That's something that I have to face as it's now coming towards, nearly the 4-year anniversary of losing him, that the times that we had with him in what would be his last year of life were hard. He was going through a lot, and he was putting us through a lot. The things that he did to his family, sorry everybody, it's just, it was hard to witness. He was such a passionate and powerful human being, and he stood for so many things, and he had the courage of his conviction to say what was right and wrong in his mind. And so for his, and if he was doing what he was doing, and everyone else be damned, and for his memory to kind of be twisted into this romanticized tragic hero, that's not the whole picture. And it really frustrated me in the early days to go, well, actually, the kid was a shithead who did something super dangerous and could have killed anybody, but just so happened to be a passenger in a car and got killed himself because of reckless and dangerous behavior of him and the driver. So it's never all that it seems, and no one is perfect, but in death, we aren't exonerated as people. And I just wanted to sort of mention that there's more to every story, and death is not an absolvent force. And it certainly doesn't excuse that, people bringing out the worst in themselves in order to claim a piece of who has been lost, and rewrite history.
Absolutely. So, would you like to offer advice for Virginia first, or would you like me to go?
I'll go, because my advice to Virginia was that sometimes you need to go away, is the simplest way I could put it. We can get so caught up in our contexts, and the longer that we're in something, the more fragile we realize it is. And following the patterns laid out for us is not easy for anyone. As a queer person, you get off scot-free from following along the patterns of your parents and of your family and of your community. But even, if you choose to, be a queer person who leads the heteronormative lifestyle, like you said, or you are, a straight person, you realize that even the pattern is unique and specific, and it's a hard thing to maintain, and it requires a lot of disposal of who you are as a human being. As a unique and special human, you actually have to manipulate and force yourself to be restricted into that way of moving forward with life, getting the good job and buying the property and having the children. You have to the amount of work that goes into making that happen, and the sacrifices you have to make in order to make those things easily available to you. It's hard, and I think Taxi Ride for me really becomes about not just taking things as they are and stepping outside of your environment. And, I obviously just spoke about my brother, but I want to talk about my amazing sister for a second. This woman never fails to floor me. With every passing year, I become prouder of who she's becoming and the work that she's doing to be a fulfilled person. And she did something a few years ago where she, made a decision to take a bit of a break and hop in a car and drive to the east coast of Australia and try out life in the mountains of New South Wales and check out Byron Bay. And eventually, we had these great conversations over the course of that time where she felt she needed to just see something more and have something else in her life other than being a grieving sister. And I already had that life. I already was living away from home, and I already had like a whole world, open to me. I was living in New Zealand, and for her, going home then became an empowered step for her to make, and the choice to live in, her hometown was a decision, not just a kind of result.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have so much love for her, and so that was my advice for Virginia. I think it ties in with a book that I call the book that changed my life. It's called This Is How. It's written by Augustine Burroughs, who wrote Running with Scissors. And basically every chapter is how to ... So it's like how to be thin, how to ride an elevator, how to never recover, how to grieve a child. Like these powerful chapters about pop psychology, and they're very anecdotal and they're very direct. And one of them is called How to Kill Yourself. And, he talks about his experiences with suicidality. And in it, I found the chapter so powerful because he talks about the fact that everything that is kind of happening in life is invented. You actually don't have to have any relationship with your parents. You don't have to do the job that you're doing. You don't have to live in the place you're living. If your life is causing you so much dismay that you would rather end it than continue, then surely at that point you realize that maybe you can do something entirely differently. I'm not saying that's the case for everybody. I'm not saying that is helpful advice for everyone. But it certainly changed my perspective that you don't need to have the name that you have. You could change whatever you wanted to about your life in order to make it worth living. And, that was kind of something that a taxi ride taught me.
Whew. I guess my advice would just simply be to question every now and then, like, who is on your side. And I don't mean this to, go about your life in a manifesting distrust sort of way. It's more, how are you nurturing trust in all of your relationships, in your friendships, in your romantic relationships, within your family? I think without trust, nothing else works. And so if you need to lean on someone, you need to know they're gonna have you back. And so don't make that still be ongoing rather than be a question mark.
Yeah, for sure. I want to do a quick shout out to Geordie, because when Geordie gave me his copy of Piece by Piece by Tori Amos, he wrote, "I'm glad you're on my side," still in the front.
Oh, lovely.
So, love you, George. Well, we're nearing the end now. Let's do these song swaps and give these people a break.
As far as songs that tie in with Taxi Ride, this one was really tough.
It was tricky, yeah.
Because Taxi Ride is such a pinnacle song for me. It means so much to me. It moves me in different ways, that to try and find a song that thematically, lyrically, musically fits in with it was such a hard task. And I pondered on it for the longest time and then gave up for a while. And then we were listening to music on shuffle, and serendipitously on came a song called 5 a.m. by Kwame Liv. I'm a bit obsessed with Kwame Liv.
She's amazing. You introduced me to her.
Yeah.
And I think it was like a solid week there where I just listened to New Boo on repeat.
New Boo. Go out and listen to New Boo. That's not...
We'll put it on the list anyway. Let me just...
Yeah.
It's a gift.
New Boo is not...
Unrelated.
This. But basically, more than 1 year in a row, Kwame Liv has been my second most listened to artist after Tori Amos. on my Spotify roundup, which always surprises me because her catalogue is not that large. She has 1 album, 2 EPs, and a number of singles. And so somehow I just listen to her an awful lot. But 5 a.m., the chorus is, everybody's hiding in the neon lights, the city is a jungle, better learn to fight, better learn the difference between church and pray, never let them tell you you can't go your own way, go your way. So for me, it's that we're all in this together and everyone's in some ways out for themselves and defenses are up. And so you have to work out, are you on my side? Like, I'm glad you're on my side, but you know, figure that out. I don't know. Anyway, I thought it tied in together. And the other one, which I very much feel thematically is the same, except I also don't know what the song is actually about, is a song called Tickle Me by Danielle Spencer, of all people. Don't judge me.
It's a good song.
I freaking love that song.
We listened to a whole bunch of Danielle Spencer afterwards, and I was quite impressed, actually.
Yeah, she's got some good stuff, but Tickle Me has always been my favorite. And it's kind of about breaking trust within a friendship circle and what that looks like. It's very overproduced and lots of layers and singing on top of each other, and so it's very hard to know what she's even singing. And the lyrics are nowhere on the internet for me to be able to decipher.
But like from what I could tell, I felt like it fed really well into this song because, you know, sort of some of that main refrain was like, well, isn't she pretty? Isn't she gorgeous? And I mean, that was what a lot of people boiled Kevin Aucoin's life down to. You know, he was an artist who just happened to work in the beauty and fashion world where, you know, physical aesthetic is seen as far more valuable than having heart and soul, but he was valued for that.
Yeah.
And so it really is so important that his legacy isn't kind of bastardized down to just being about the fashion industry and all of its horrors. There was something about him that ran deeper.
And so tell us about your song.
The songs that I picked, one, Bleed Like Me by Garbage. You know, there's literally, you know, so Lily is dancing on the table. There's like the sort of third chorus is JT gets all fucked up in some karaoke bar. After 2 drinks, he's a loser. After 3 drinks, he's a star. Getting all nostalgic as he sings, I will survive. And the song is all about different types of queer people. You know, there's someone who is trying to figure out if they're a girl or they're a boy, and there's someone who is dealing with self-harm, there's someone who's dealing with eating disorder, but the sort of chorus is, you know, they cry, hey baby, can you bleed like me? You know, are we all really the same? And that's, you know, it's that we are one crap, you know, but like, you know, it's but we all bleed the same color, and so that was one that really stuck out for me, and it's a friggin' amazing song, and that whole album, Bleed Like Me, the album by Garbage, is top tier. And the other one is a song called Why Georgia by John Mayer. And I have a complicated relationship with this artist, but the reason I picked him in particular is because my brother listened a great deal to one of his songs, Gravity, and we as a household grew up with Room for Squares was one of our favourite albums to listen to, like in the house, and it was such a great album. It was John Mayer's debut, and this is on it. And this song is really just, I'll read some of the lyrics, you'll get the picture, but have a listen to it. And a lot of Room for Squares I think is actually really beautiful. 4 more exits to my apartment, but I am tempted to keep the car in drive and leave it all behind, because I wonder sometimes about the outcome of a still verdictless life. Am I living it right? Am I living it right? Am I living it right? Yeah, it's just a song that really spoke to me about that taxi ride, that journey of just kind of just going, getting in a car and going and really weighing up what it is that you are, what your life has become, and what it could be. So those were my recommendations.
Lovely.
We made it.
We did, and you made it. I'm assuming, if you're hearing this, it means you reached the end.
This podcast episode will self-destruct in 5 seconds.
If your brain hasn't already.
But thank you for sticking with us.
Yeah.
I'm actually really proud of this episode, and I'm proud of us.
I think we did a good job.
Yeah, we're sitting in a pretty dodgy, divey room in Green River,
It's the second
Wyoming.
room we're in. We had to get moved because the roof started leaking when the person above us was having a shower.
Yeah.
And so we had to change rooms. But here we are
In Green River,
Wyoming. And we had a spectacular day today
Oh
that
my
you're going to
God.
have to wait to hear about.
In Crazy.
No, Carbon.
Carbon?
Oh, no.
Carbon and Crazy. You'll
Carbon
hear
and
some of our
Crazy.
amazing adventures through Aspen and up through this part of the world. Can't wait.
It'll be great.
See you then.
Bye.
The Michael's Walk podcast acknowledges that the journey they are undertaking takes place on the sacred and unceded nations of many proud Indigenous peoples. From the lands of the Wurundjeri and the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, we are fortunate to call home, to each and every Native American tribe's land we'll set foot on as we travel. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and humbly acknowledge their sovereignty.